Looks like President Biden's autopen had a mind of its own. A House Oversight report revealing that recently uncovered documents and witness testimony indicate that even when a verbal decision was memorialized in an email, it doesn't prove that President Biden had made the decision himself. So the question keeps coming back to this. If it wasn't Biden, who was making presidential decisions? Well, it turns out Chief of Staff Jeff Zients would often give the sign-off for the autopen after this lengthy process of telephone calls. For example, in January 2025, Zients says that Biden held a meeting with aides about pardons for his brother and other family members. Now, Zients himself was not in that meeting. Remember, that's actually important. Then Deputy Chief of Staff Bruce Reed or White House counsel Ed Siskel presumably left the meeting and told Zients staffer Rosa Poe about Biden's decision. Poe then called Zients at home to relay the message. So according to this report, Zients did not bother calling the president or anyone else in that meeting to confirm that that actually all happened. He just went on to authorize the use of the autopen. Someone in the staff secretary's office would then convey that to somebody who would then use the autopen for the pardons. So look, how many times did this occur? And again, what did Biden know, if anything, about this process? And then there was the issue of his everyday life being micromanaged by his team, his clothing, his schedule, the number of steps he could walk or climb.
It's your testimony here today that you never just asked somebody, whether it was one of the senior advisors or the vice president, is the president okay?
I never had to ask that question because I saw the president on a daily basis, and I never ever thought if I never had that question.
Here with more is House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer. Congressman, thanks for joining us. I mean, to the regular person watching this out there in TV land, this stinks to high heaven. So we need your gut check. You've seen all the documents. Is there any evidence indicating that Biden himself was involved in approving these pardons? Real hard evidence?
There really isn't, and it's astonishing when you're talking about thousands of pardons and dozens of executive orders. Basically any legal document, especially during the last 3 months of the Biden administration, that's what we focused on. And every person who we deposed had a different story on what the proper process was that they followed in using the autopen to sign a legal document. Their stories were inconsistent, and then when you throw in the emails from the Merrick Garland Department of Justice expressing concern to these very staffers about the excessive use of the autopen and asking point-blank questions, what was their process, then the entire story's changed. So the inconsistencies are abound. But one thing that is consistent, Laura, is the fact that no one saw Joe Biden, no one who authorized the autopen or even gave the authorization to use the autopen, no one who authorized the autopen or actually physically manually pressed the power button on the autopen ever heard directly from Joe Biden. And furthermore, there are no notes. There's no chain of custody that would show that Joe Biden was involved in any meetings where they discussed the pardon process. I mean, this is appalling, and everyone in America saw during the debate and during the last few months of the Biden administration, this was a president in decline. The staffers confirmed that they would go weeks, months, and even years without communicating with Joe Biden. This is a massive cover-up, and what we determined was every pardon should be declared null and void.
Well, back to that point, I want to get into specific pardons in a moment, but that's all well and good to say they're null and void, but I'm a lawyer, so I'm going to ask you this. Is there really any legal means of challenging these pardons? I mean, I don't see any federal court that wants to get involved in what seems to be unknowable with the president's plenary pardon power. I think they're going to call it a political question and say we're not getting involved.
Well, that's why we brought Dr. O'Connor in, the White House physician, and we asked him the first question, Dr. O'Connor, were you ever told to lie about Joe Biden's health? And he pled the Fifth Amendment. We had so many questions about the mental fitness. What we found in the investigation also was the fact that President Biden's staff talked about whether or not they should give him a cognitive test. And then, according to the staffers, they ultimately decided to not give him a cognitive test. Now, that makes no sense. If you wanted to prove to the skeptics in the media and the skeptics in the Republican Party that the president was mentally fit for office, why not giving a cognitive test? We wonder whether or not they gave the test and he failed, or did they decide not to give the test because they knew he would fail? Either way, there's no evidence that shows Joe Biden was an active participant in the decision-making process in any of those pardons or executive orders that were signed with the autopen.
Are you of the view that, for instance, Biden's pardon of his brother, Jim, or let's say Anthony Fauci, are you of the view that those pardons are null and void, given what you know?
I am. Absolutely, 100%. If anyone doubts whether or not there was a cover-up, they need to watch every minute of the testimony that we got, all of the hours and hours of depositions from these staffers, where you had people like Ian Sams, who was his spokesperson, who would come out every day and give press conferences blasting me or blasting Robert Hur or Jim Jordan or someone. Under oath, when we asked him, how many times did you meet directly with Joe Biden? He said 2 times in 2 years. Neera Tanden, his executive secretary, well, 2 times in 2 years. Neera Tanden, then, who's his executive secretary, who that position is one of the closest to the president, whether it's Obama, Trump, George Bush, Obama. She admitted that she would go weeks without having any interaction with Joe Biden. They clearly shielded him, not only from the American people, but from their inner staff. If he was an active participant, there would be notes. There would be notes. The National Archives has no record of notes. There are no emails. It almost looks like they went back and changed their story from he approved it verbally and orally to, we had memos and things like that. There were so many inconsistencies. And I think that the Department of Justice can bring all these people in, especially the 3 staffers and the doctor who pled the Fifth Amendment, and press them for more information, because at the end of the day, the American people know that Joe Biden was in a mental state of decline. He hasn't given a TV interview since he left office. The statement blasting my report today wasn't from him. It was from an unnamed staffer.
Yeah.
So
he's
look,
given speeches. But
I think that's the issue here, was the cognitive decline, the cover-up, and the unauthorized use of the autopen.
But there has to be accountability. I know, you're trying to get the D.C. Board of Medicine to investigate that Dr. Kevin O'Connor, but is that going to do it? I mean, we've got 15 seconds. Anyone else should be investigated here?
No, I want Pam Bondi. We have handed her this investigation on a platter. We've done the heavy lifting with all the hours of depositions. We've traced the emails. We've proven there's no evidence that Joe Biden was involved in the decision-making process. She needs to bring people in, threaten accountability, threaten prosecution, get the truth from these people, and hold them accountable. We had a president of the United States who wasn't fit to serve. They tried to run him for a second term, and then they abused the autopen during the lame duck period.
All right, Congressman, a massive scandal. There has to be accountability. We can talk about it until we're blue in the face. Unless there's accountability, what's the point here? Thank you for all your hard work on this.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.